Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with X-Men #1. So here is the next installment of our Age of Apocalypse thing. And as you can see here, it says the Age of Apocalypse begins now. And I just love that. I remember seeing the trading card for this when I was a kid, and I was like, what do they mean by that? And it was shortly thereafter that I was introduced to this series. So cool little history tip there. But I love that cover of Nate just showing this raw energy. And just a little quick backstory here. So Nate Gray is the Earth 295 version of Cable. And even when, after Legion's Quest, when Xavier died, there was a page where it showed what the titles mutated into. So for example, X-Men was like Amazing X-Men, Uncanny X-Men was Astonishing X-Men, X-Force turned into Gambit and the Externals, and Cable mutated into X-Men. And that's how we have two entirely different versions of Nate Gray in our Prime universe now, thanks to this event. So anyway, let's go ahead and crack this book open. The print date on this was March 1995. And before we even start talking about why we see Cyclops here, this says Stan Lee presents Breaking Away. Jeff Loeb, writer. Sellers, Smith, LaRosa, and Conrad doing the inks. Steve Skaros, I think's how you say that, pencils. Starkings and Chromacraft doing the lettering. Lisa Patrick was the editor, Mike Thomas colors, and Bob Harris was editor-in-chief. And so we open up here and we see a picture of Cyclops, because this is the 295 Cyclops, and he says, "Come with me if you want to live." So 95, I kind of love that little Terminator reference. And you just get this thoughts of Nate. He's talking about how, does this face seem familiar, or have you dreamed this over and over that it just seems familiar? So you come to realize that Cyclops is actually helping Nate escape. However, he wants freedom, and this is the first time he uses his psychic powers, and he goes, "Can't guess who you are. Don't care why you're helping me. All I know is I'm out of here." Now what I like here is because we find out from X-Men Alpha that Cyclops is working for Apocalypse and Sinister. And the narrator says, "And the man you left behind, your would-be benefactor? Why is it when you scan his thoughts, the overwhelming feeling he has for you is envy?" And I like how you just kind of see this very shadowed look of Cyclops, and he just goes, "Wait." Because you just kind of see that longing to be free himself, but he was raised by Sinister, so him and his brother both kind of did not have a choice in this world the way you kind of read it. And one, one clings to it, one kicks against it. And we'll get into that when we get into X Factor, or Factor X, should I say. That's what it mutated into. Now Nate's kind of moving along in his mind, and it says, "Imagine putting together a jigsaw puzzle, but you don't know what it's supposed to look like, or how many pieces the puzzle contains. Now imagine finding a new piece." So we kind of get one of those 90s sideway panels, and I love that we see the ruins of the Xavier Institute. "Even in ruins, you can sense the power of this place, the sense of wonder and awe once inspired. It might have even been a school." And so we got to flip the book back around. That's the only thing about those 90 panels that are a pain, is you have to flip them. And so I don't want to spoil that, because that kind of goes into stuff that we're not quite going over yet. But as Nate's imagining this on the psychic plane, a voice says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "They can't hear you because you're not really here. I've used our silence to find you. I've warned you about pushing yourself." So this is the Earth 295 version of Forge. And like I said, it can be very dangerous using your psi powers alone. Because in this universe, Forge looks even more machine than man, as we're in the Prime universe. Is what? It's his leg and his arm. But yeah, he is more cybernetic than anything in this universe. So flip some pages. And so we come to find that, so here's Forge, he's sort of the schoolmaster of this team. Here's Mastermind, who's normally from the Hellfire Club. Sauron. Brute, I think, was part of the Morlocks, and then Toad, who was another Brotherhood member. So this is kind of like an odd bunch of people to be working with together. Now, what I like is Nate's talking about, you can tell he's really young and inexperienced. Because he wakes up and he goes, guys, you should have been there. Well, Forge was, I guess, sort of. I was messing around in my head, pushing myself in a kind of psychic memory deal, and out of nowhere I let out this mega TK whack. And again, Forge, in a sense, the way he talks, his body language, reminds me a lot of Morpheus with Neo. He goes, yes, Nate, we know. Huh? You do? Yes. It was quite obvious. And look at this just crater he leaves. And this shows how Nate is a very powerful mutant. Now let me explain something right here. One reason why Sinister has always wanted Jean Grey and Scott Summers' DNA is because he knows that they can make powerful mutants. Well, in the main Prime universe, when Jean died, Sinister still felt that way, and that's why he created Madeline Pryor, and that's how Scott met her, and they had Nate, the Cable version. And then Apocalypse infected him with the TK virus, and that's a whole other thing that we'll go over at another time, but needless to say that Cable is not as powerful because he has to use 90% of his power to keep the TK virus in check. If he doesn't, then it starts to take over his body. So that's why he doesn't really use his powers as much because of that reason. However, this Nate Grey did not suffer that same fate. So he is limitless with his power. But right now he's inexperienced. And I like how he's like, I'm sorry, Forge. I could have jeopardized our position. Don't patronize me. This private unsupervised training stops now. So you can kind of see the student-teacher relationship and how it can at times start to cause clap back at one another. So at that point, would they kind of leave you wanting more? Like, what does he mean? Why is Nate can't use his powers? Well, we get into that later. But you come to find out that this ragtag team, what they are, is they're a traveling theater troupe. So they show which ones are the actors, the more Shakespearean people, how Mastermind hides their true looks. However, well, I'm getting ahead of myself again. Why are they a traveling theater troupe? So it says in here that there was a lot of humans after the Cullings that were 90% of the human population in North America was wiped out. These people were the survivors that didn't flee to the European High Council. And I like how it says that the reason that they didn't do is either like out of fear, out of poverty, not being able to pay their way, or just ignorance. So anyway, Forge kind of uses this theater trope as a way to freely travel amongst the humans without, being persecuted. And that's what kind of leads to a problem here, where this is like the local law enforcement is essentially, this guy even calls himself a prelate. And he's like, someone said we saw a human toad and a bird. And Forge is like, we're just a traveling, trope. And before they can do anything, we see a voice say, you shouldn't be bothering us. We shouldn't be bothering you. Say goodnight and leave. Good night. Please come back. So these poor guys got Obi-Wan Kenobi'd real quick. And of course, Forge is like, odd. And then again, Nate. And you can just see the anger in his face. And of course, the young one like, what? What'd I do? And what Forge is trying to say is you controlled those men's minds. And he's like, you used your gift. And Nate's like, well, how good of a gift, or why even have this gift if I can't use it to help my friends? And Forge essentially says that your gift, I'm afraid, he's like, I understand you want to help, but I'm afraid that each time you use your gift, it's like a beacon. And with that, I like how we segue into Apocalypse. Beautiful splash page, but I hate how when they do that and they put it right down the crease, because it really kind of takes away from it in that sense. Now, We see Cyclops again, and he's talking about how Sinister has fled. What does he mean by that? We'll get into that in Factor X. Now this here is the Shadow King. And just like echoing Forge's words, the Shadow King says, I've sensed a telepath. And each time he uses his powers, it creates a ripple in the psionic plane like no other. And so Cyclops is listening to all this. And what I like is Apocalypse, in his arrogance, says, you will tell me more, Shadow King. Not because it is of any real consequence, but because it amuses me. And in Cyclops, there's a scene where he says, telepaths are rare, but it just might help me in my plans. So some build up there, love it. And now Apocalypse wants this telepath. And goes, if he's not going to join me, then kill it, my dear Domino. So here's the first appearance of Earth 295 Domino, and she looks wicked creepy. It's just kind of like, man, did you really have to go to the bad side in this universe? But again, AOA, it's a free-for-all. And then we jump into Kentucky, or Kansas, not Kentucky. And we see all these humans in the Infinites, and they're basically saying, we are relocating you. And what I like here is it says, they'd heard about other cities where humans were herded together and tested off for shipping. Testing. They say shipping. But surely those places had done something to deserve it. Surely it could not happen here. And so we see this elderly gentleman here, and he's like, run. He's like, I'll die before I let them take you. And well, needless to say, that very tragic scene happens. So very, very gritty, sorrowful looking scene, and that very much looks like World War II and the Holocaust in that sense. It just, God, it gives you chills. And we find out that this is how the theater trope is able to kind of track where these humans are being shipped to. So we get all of the Forge's team coming and attacking these people. And I love how Brute really wants to beat the crap out of the train conductor. And yet Forge, again, being the schoolmaster, enough, old friend, beating this man for only doing his job makes us no better than Apocalypse's hoodlums. And so before they can get all the humans unloaded off of the train, they get abducted. And I love how Nate just jumps in. Like Forge said, do not get involved. Well, that does not happen. Now, this girl, she's like, that guy's helping us. And Nate's distracted, so he doesn't see the other Infinite. And she's like, he doesn't see, look out behind. And so we get this sonic scream. And if you hadn't guessed that this red-headed woman here, this is the 295 Earth appearance of Teresa Cassidy, a.k.a. Siren. And so this is the first time she's ever used her powers, because it's a moment of stress. How they usually say that mutants usually activate their X factor under stress, duress, stress, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, I've never done that before. And she passes out. And what I like is why she's using her powers. It says, how odd life is. For years, the young woman named Teresa secretly envied the mutants who had oppressed her and her family. For to be only human was synonymous with helpless. And as the sonic scream erupts from her volcanic force, the result of some latent and up till now unknown mutant ability, her only thought is, she will never be helpless again. And just beautiful artwork in this book, guys. I love each panel. It really helps enhance the comic book, especially pushing Loeb's narrative along. Now, I don't want to give any more away on this book, because the ending really sets up for the next issue, and you're just kind of like, I see where this is going and why this happened. So I don't want to spoil that yet. Yes, we're going through the entire X-Men series, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So X-Men #1. Great story. I like the way that they introduced Nate into this universe and made him kind of likable, showing how he's powerful yet inexperienced and how he needs his friends to help build him up. So with that said, if you guys have enjoyed this comic book, we'd really appreciate it if you take a minute to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. You can come to the channel, and we love to have a dialogue with y'all down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description below. And if you've enjoyed this book, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and pick up a copy. And with that said, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.